Hey friends, this is Darnell coming to you once again from the beautiful Bedrock Ministry studio as we march forward with America in Bible prophecy. So where are we at in our studies? One of the things that I want to be very careful to do as we march through this video after video is I want to give you enough information where you can clearly see the biblical proofs that I'm bringing to you, but at the same time, not overload you to the point that we're kind of lost in the weeds, so to speak. I don't want you to lose sight of the main points that I'm bringing you, and that is this. I've given you biblical proof that the rapture, the removal of the church, the body of Christ, those that are going to be alive until the time that Christ removes his church, that event is tied to the second coming scripturally. There's scriptural proof for that. And so if that is true, which I certainly maintain that it is, then we have to be prepared to live through that until that time, which means living through the final 7 years, living through the final 3.5 years, which is the Great Tribulation. So why is it important, that we are prepared for this? We need to be effective in that time. The world is going to, from the time that peace treaty is signed, that final 7 years, the world is going to begin to change dramatically. Well, it's already changing at a pretty rapid pace if you're sort of paying attention to what's going on. But mark my words, it's going to continue to escalate right up until the last day. Now, we not only need to be prepared in order for survival, but we need to be prepared for revival. Because just as there's going to be a great falling away that the Bible teaches about in those final days, there's also going to be a great revival. And to be prepared, to be effective, we must understand the prophetic timeline. So that's why we're going through this exercise. Not only should this draw us closer to Christ, but it should prepare us for the times that God promises are coming on the world stage. Now, I want to keep it simple for you in this context. So there's things that we should be watching for that we've already covered in the previous videos. Let me lay them out for you quickly. We should be watching for this progress towards this peace treaty. Remember, the peace treaty between Israel and the Palestinians will be the confirmation of the covenant that clearly starts the clock for that final 7 years leading to the second coming of Christ. So that peace treaty and anything pertaining to that peace treaty is something that we should be watching very diligently. We should also be watching the developments that will lead to this world war. This sixth trumpet war that I taught about in one of my videos. That is coming as also could come before the peace treaty, could come after, but it will clearly come in the days ahead very soon, and certainly before the abomination of desolation. Now, we need to be watching for that. We also need to be watching anything having to do with this Pope, what he is saying, what's coming out of the Vatican, what is going on with Roman Catholicism, and what is going on with this move to bring all religions together, what they call the interfaith movement. Okay? Anything having to do with that realm is something that we should be very closely paying attention to, knowing that will ultimately end up being the one world religion led by the false prophet. And then fourthly, anything having to do with the European Union and the United Nations. Why is that? In the last lesson, we looked at Daniel 2 pretty extensively, and what exactly that meant. The Nebuchadnezzar, King Nebuchadnezzar, king of the Babylonians, had a dream, and we walked through what it was. I won't rehash it. You can go back and watch the previous video. But Daniel interpreted the dream. And if you recall, it was the image of a man from head to toe. It was these different metals which represented different kingdoms and empires, starting with the Babylonian Empire, and then working all the way down to the feet and toes. Now, the real important part of that, it's all important, but the real important part for the subject of end time Bible prophecy is really the legs of iron, the feet and toes of iron mixed with clay. That is really what pertains to the time that we're in now. So we established that the Roman Empire was the legs of iron. And the Roman Empire, I said last week, it basically ran from 197-ish AD to 284 BC. Now, some will say that the Roman Empire ended closer to 500 BC, 476, which is when the last Roman emperor was defeated. Okay, we could use that date, but really, the fall of the Roman Empire with regard to its world domination had begun earlier than that, around 284. So again, I don't want to get too far into the weeds on the history of it, but really that was the Roman Empire was the last great world dominant empire in the world. And it began to break down, and we went into what is known as the Dark Ages. Now, the Dark Ages, the actual dates of the Dark Ages are from about 500 AD to 1500 AD. I'm going to give you a little bit of history here just because it's important with regard to understanding the 10 toes, the feet and the 10 toes. So why do they call it the Dark Ages? Well, because during the Roman Empire, the Romans kept very good historical records. After the fall of the Roman Empire, they call it the Dark Ages because there wasn't real good records kept. So it was kind of dark, with regard to history and knowing what was going on. But there are things that we know. We know that the Roman Empire, back when it was in power, wasn't just in Rome. It wasn't just in Italy. It covered, like I said, the Romans, ruled over Jerusalem, and they ruled over. They were the world dominant power. Pretty much all of the European area that we know of as Europe today. So it was a world power centralized out of that area. So that's kind of a context of what's going on there. Now, there was this fall of the Roman Empire because Europe began to be this place that was under fluctuation and change. I won't go into all the history of it, but there was different people and tribes and stuff coming from different places in the world that were challenging Rome's authority, and everything was in influx, and there was this big power struggle going on. And so that's kind of just what was going on during that time. Well, I said in the last video that in 800 AD, Pope Leo the Third had actually crowned Charlemagne as the emperor of the Roman Empire, or the Holy Roman Empire, to be more accurate. That's where we see this feet mixed with iron and clay, because the iron is that Roman political force coming out of the Roman Empire, which is really a European force. And then the clay is the religious aspect, where the Pope, because if you study history, you realize just how much of what was going on in that time, in that part of the world, how intermixed it was with politics and religion, and what was going on with the Roman Catholic Church, and the struggle between Roman Catholicism and Christianity. it's a whole big story that I won't get too far into. You can study history. You can you go to Wikipedia, go to many websites, and find out what was going there. But I'm gonna not get too far into the weeds. I just want you to understand that that when this Pope Leo the third had placed this crown on Charlemagne's head, that he was called the emperor of the new Holy Roman Empire. And that's where we get that term, Holy Roman Empire, and that is the feet mixed with iron and clay. So what's interesting about that is, as I say, Charlemagne was a Frank. He was he was the ancestry of France. So and again, the Germans had already begun to come in and challenge Roman. So there's a lot more going on there than just Rome and Italians and Romans. It was the Germans, the British, the Franks. It was a lot of different things happening there. So I'm painting a picture of this for you so that you understand that when we think of Europe today and these different nations, this all began way back here in the Dark Ages that I'm sharing with you now. So that is the feet. That right there, that Holy Roman Empire, is the iron and clay mix. So what are the 10 toes? Well, we jump ahead. We obviously know that the Holy Roman Empire kind of fizzled out in power as well, and we jump all the way ahead to where we are now. So these 10 toes, we know, represent a group of nations, what we would call nations now, that will be in power when Christ comes. I went over that with you last week. It said in Daniel 2, verse 44, I'll read it again. And in the days of those kings, speaking of the 10 toes, the God of heaven will set up a kingdom that shall never be destroyed. Now that is the second coming of Christ. So those 10 toes, we know then, are a group of 10 nations that form a union that will essentially dominate the world. And we know that it's coming out of the Holy Roman Empire. So that when that happens, that's 10 toes, that's considered the revised Holy Roman Empire. So when you hear these terms, Roman Empire, which ended again at the start of the Dark Ages, and then the Holy Roman Empire, which started in 800 AD with the crowning of Charlemagne, and then now jump all the way now to the revised Holy Roman Empire, which will be these 10 nations. So these 10 nations are going to come out of the European Union, because if you look at the European Union, which was actually established in 1993, it was started by 6 nations, which included Germany, France, and Italy, and 3 others, the Netherlands, Belgium, and the 5th one slips my mind. But the point is that there you have Germany, France, and Italy, and now it is expanded to 28 nations. So the European Union right now is 28 nations. But the time is coming real quickly when 10 are going to rise to the top. There are already talks of having a sort of a 2-tiered European Union, where you'll have this one tier at the top and then another tier at the bottom. And I believe that all signs point to the fact that that's probably where we're going to see that 10-nation alliance sort of rise to the top. Now, in the videos ahead, we are going to dig into how that will change. It'll go from 10 nations to 7, and ultimately the Antichrist will come out of the European Union. So So I'm sharing all this with you so that we can get to that final point, that we have to understand that this one world government that will basically join with or include the one world religion will ultimately be centralized out of Europe and the Holy Roman Empire. That's how we know the Antichrist will come out of that area. That's one way. Now, I told you last week that we were also going to look at Daniel 7, which also ties into this. Now, we won't get all the way through it, but let's just jump over there and start to take a look at Daniel 7. So in Daniel 7, Daniel gets this vision. Let me just read this to you. It's probably just as easy to read it as to say it. It says, in the first year of Belshazzar, king of Babylon, Daniel saw a dream and visions of his head as he lay in his bed. Then he wrote down the dream and told the sum of the matter. Daniel declared, I saw in my vision by night, and behold, 4 winds of heaven were stirring up the great sea. Now, I already said in one of my previous videos that the sea represents people. It represents the masses, okay? And 4 great beasts came up out of the sea, different from one another. The first was like a lion and had eagle's wings. Then as I looked, its wings were plucked off, and it was lifted up from the ground and made to stand on 2 feet like a man, and the mind of a man was given to it. And behold, another beast, a second one, like a bear. It was raised up on one side. It had 3 ribs in its mouth between its teeth, and it was told, arise, devour much flesh. After this I looked, and behold, another like a leopard, with 4 wings of a bird on its back. And the beast had 4 heads, and dominion was given to it. After this I saw in the night visions, and behold, a 4th beast, terrifying and dreadful and exceedingly strong. It had great iron teeth. There's that iron. Remember, what does iron represent? Iron represents the Roman Empire, right? It had great iron teeth. It devoured and broke in pieces and stamped what was left of its feet. Okay, it was different from all the beasts that were before it, and it had 10 horns. I considered the 10 horns, and behold, there came up among them another horn, a little one, before which 3 of the first horns were plucked up by the roots. And behold, in this horn were eyes of a man, and a mouth speaking great things. So I will just give you a little sneak preview. We're not going to break all this down, but what are all these beasts that he's talking about? What is he seeing here? Well, I will clearly tell you that all of that we just, or pretty much all of it that we just read, represented nations that that are alive and running here on the world stage today. And when we get down to that 4th beast that we see with the iron teeth and all, he describes that. That's the same vision, really, that we see in the book of Revelation, only it is morphed in Revelation. We're going to look at that on the next video, okay? Sneak preview there. But that small horn, the little horn that came up, that ended up in the last verse, it says, and behold, in this horn were the eyes like the eyes of a man, and mouth speaking great things. That is the Antichrist. Okay, so what are all these nations? Who are all these nations? That will be the topic of our next video. I won't have time to really effectively and thoroughly get through it in this video, but I just kind of wanted to read the passage for you today and give you a sneak preview, and then we will look at the interpretation of the vision and what God has revealed to us now about this vision. We will be looking at that in our next lesson. So again, just wanted to kind of drive home for you what's important. And that is what I have laid out for you in this lesson. Don't lose sight of what we should be watching going on in the world, and don't lose sight of of what I've taught you in terms of where this final world government is going to be centralized. This one world religion, who is going to be leading that, and where the Antichrist is going to come from. It all begins to fit into the prophetic timeline. So in the next lesson, we're going to look at this interpretation, and then we're going to jump over to Revelation and see how things change from Daniel to Revelation, and yet still hold the same components. We are, without a doubt, in the next lesson, we will be revealing America in the prophecies, in the Bible. That will be exciting, my friends. Hey, I hope you're enjoying this. Please feel free to ask any questions on the Submit Your Questions page on the website as we go along. I'd be happy to answer them for you. Love to hear from you. There's a page on there where you can contact us. Even if you don't have a question, we would love to hear from you and hear how you're being blessed by these teachings and being blessed by the Lord in general. This is Darnell coming to you from the beautiful Bedrock Ministry Studio. Now let's go change the day.